Hi, welcome to Weekend Review, where we look at some of the news making headlines. I'm joined this week by our sports editor, Ryan Sharp, from the Watchdog Desk, Brianna Bailey, and my old friend from Business, Don Mecoy. Brianna, let's start with you. Kind of an interesting and sort of troubling story about rehab centers and folks that are sentenced for drug convictions or looking at drug convictions are being sent to some unusual places as part of their sentence.
Yes, so Oklahoma's prisons are full, as you know. There's not a lot of treatment options for people that don't have insurance or money, and the courts are referring some people to these places that kind of function as work camps, and they go and it's supposed to be, it's sold to them as drug rehab, but what they do is they spend large portions of their time working in a poultry plant for a company called Simmons Foods, gutting chickens.
And have there been concerns raised about the issue of these folks doing this, and how is that separated from sort of the issue of a private business using what seems to be almost prison labor to do their work?
So I visited one of these nonprofits that run these places, these sort of work camps that call themselves recovery centers, last week, and they told me that they basically operate like a temp agency for this poultry company, and they have a contract with the poultry company to provide labor. The people who live there, they agree to basically turn over all their wages to the nonprofit, and that pays for their room and board. They have maybe some anger management classes, like 1 hour a week of counseling, stuff like that.
And you say that the people who are in these programs have essentially agreed to this working in these environments.
They have agreed. Some people might wonder if it's much of a choice, though, because if the choice is between prison and going to working long hours in a poultry plant, that's not much of a choice.
And is there anybody in the state that regulates these facilities?
So because these places don't call themselves drug treatment centers, they are totally unregulated by the Oklahoma Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, which would license them if they called themselves a treatment center. But they don't call themselves that. They say we're a recovery program. So there's no regulation of what they have to offer, how much counseling they have to provide, anything like that.
Well, it's a really interesting story. It'll be in Sunday's paper. We'll be looking for that. Ryan, let's turn to our old toy box. Both teams in action again this week. Both teams looking pretty strong right now, OU and OSU.
Yeah, obviously OU comes off a massive win in Columbus over Ohio State. Some call it an upset, some don't. It just kind of depends on how you look. The road team in that series has oddly won several games in a row. Ohio State typically wins down here, and OU typically wins up there. So they're obviously coming off a big win, facing a little bit different opponent in Tulane. I think the biggest item off this game is that it's on pay-per-view. I've gotten more calls and complaints and people calling about the game being on pay-per-view. And what people don't understand is that the athletic department typically does this for one game a year. And what it does is it helps fund some of their other non-revenue sports. I mean, that money goes all over the place. It's not just for the football program. But I think they've done one pay-per-view game each of the last several years, for the most part. You've got a lot of people fired up. I think it's about $55 to pay for it. Every major provider is carrying it. So I don't think that the game, or it shouldn't be anyway, the game shouldn't be all that competitive, but it's a way that OU can help fill the coffers for their other programs as well. And for Oklahoma State, they're back on the road. They came off a road win at South Alabama last week, and now they're going to Pitt. Pitt came to Stillwater last year and gave Oklahoma State a little bit of a game. I think the final margin was 10, 11 points, something like that. Pitt decided to try to cover one of the best receivers in the country last year one-on-one, and I think James Washington had just about 300 yards receiving on maybe 8 or 9 catches. They asked the coach earlier this week if he'd do that, and he said no. They're not going to try to game plan the same way. He likened it to trying to play a Big 12 team the same way he would a Big 10 team, which is quite different. So it should be a pretty good game. Pitt gave Penn State a little bit of a game last week. Penn State's ranked number 5. Oklahoma State's ranked number 9. So it should be a pretty interesting weekend.
$55 to sit on the couch. You gonna pay it?
No.
You're not gonna watch the game?
I think it's on the radio. Toby Rowland does a good job.
Okay. And there were reports that, Don, you were seen out waving a flag and trying to stick it in the front yard last week. Is that true?
No, although I did enjoy that. I thought that was very entertaining. I was surprised that they stayed on the air that long after the game so that we got to see that on TV. I thought that was
What's been
cool.
the feedback
And
on
there's
that?
been a lot of mixed reviews of Mayfield's planting of the flag in a turf field.
Attempted
it didn't really
attempted
plan, it just kind
planting,
of
yeah.
fell over. But it's about what you'd expect. Some people are fired up about it, and some people didn't really care. Some people liked it. I think we had more people fired up that he apologized, and so that he really had nothing to apologize for. He's a fiery guy. He's really emotional, and that's pretty well known. And everybody that I've come in contact with that cares one way or the other, most of them didn't have much of a problem with him actually doing it in the heat of the moment. So you get teams all the time that sing their alma mater on an opposing team's field or whatever it may be. That just happened to be televised to a national audience, and it happened to be a top 10 matchup, and a lot of things went into it. But some people fired up, but for the most part, people kind of shrugged it off.
I wonder what Coach Snyder would have said about that kind of activity if one of his players had done that.
He probably would have written a letter.
He,
Sure.
yes, to the turf,
Yeah.
apologizing, saying that he has a bright future.
Yeah.
But okay, well, that's kind of Don. So let's talk about hurricanes. Even though they're a distance away, it has an impact on us here in Oklahoma City. What are we feeling?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we've done several stories since the first hurricane rolled into the Houston area about particularly the effect that it's had on the oil and gas industry, because so much of that infrastructure is down in the Houston area. And we saw gasoline prices go up from, I think, at my station where I like to fill up, I went from $1.93 to $2.20, and now it's back down to $1.98. So, and that's kind of what we told people was going to happen. That's what did happen. And some of our gasoline got drawn into the Texas market because we produce our local refineries. We don't even get gasoline from Texas. We have our own refineries here in Oklahoma. But some of that supply had to go down to Texas because a lot of their stuff was offline. And now things have kind of gone back to normal. Really the main reason I wanted to talk about hurricanes was because our energy editor discovered this great story of what happened in Houston. This guy, Matt Maroney, who's an Oklahoma City oil and gas attorney, found himself down in Houston because he was getting treatment for cancer. And there's the MD Anderson Cancer Treatment Center down there. So he was in a hotel like a lot of people who get treatment there were. The hurricane rolls in, the streets get flooded. He realizes that he believes that his appendix has burst. He understands the symptoms.
As if he doesn't have enough going on.
Right. So he goes down to the lobby and he says, listen, I need an ambulance to get me to a hospital. I'm pretty sure my appendix has burst. And they said, there's 3 feet of water around the hotel. There's no way to get an ambulance here. We don't have any way to get you to a hospital. So Mr. Maroney's a former Army Ranger. He prints off a map, puts it in a plastic sheathing so he can get it in the water, and hikes 2 miles to the VA hospital.
With a burst appendix.
With a burst appendix. And they tell him, yes, your appendix is burst, and they send a policeman to go get a surgeon that fixes his burst appendix. And he's fine, apparently. This week, Mr. Maroney's had surgery for his cancer. I was just asking our reporter, Adam Wilmoth, who'd done all this reporting on this, if we'd heard anything about the outcome of that, and we don't yet, but we're big fans of Mr. Maroney, who frankly became an Army Ranger when he was 34 years old, which is really late in life to go through Army Ranger training. They told him, you'd be better off, doing lawyering. You're a lawyer. He said, nope, I want to fight. And so anyway, he's an interesting cat, and we wish him the best, and he really did some amazing stuff.
Yeah, it is a great story. If you didn't see it, pick up a paper. You can check it out, or you can find it online. We continue to keep those people in our prayers down in Florida and Texas and elsewhere that have been affected by these storms. They've been horrible. We have that kind of coverage every day in the newspaper, online. Check it out, look for it. We think you'll like what you see. We'll see you next week.